who missed it. And this is being run meeting style, as you can see, which is a little bit less formal than a webinar, maybe a little more chaotic. But in keeping with the idea of that, this will be a sort of intimate and celebratory gathering. We thought it would be nice for everybody to be able to see who's here. Feel free to greet each other in the chat and scroll through the pages as people file in. Please keep your microphone on mute, but keep your camera on or off, whatever you're more comfortable with, though we really do love to see you and your pets if that happens to be the case. If you want to leave a message for Josh or any of the other authors in the chat, you can go ahead and do that, and we'll save that for them for later. We'll keep it for after the program, just in case they're too busy paying attention to what's on screen to be able to see the chat. As you can see, we have a lot of speakers on the agenda tonight, but we expect this to take about 1 hour in total. It's really more of a sampler and a celebration than a full-on author reading, but I think you're going to be inspired to check out more of these writers' works in depth after the program. So once again, we're so happy that you could join us as we celebrate Josh's work at the New England Review over the past decade. It has given us a really good excuse to bring a bunch of very interesting writers together. So thank you for that, Josh. As our nonfiction editor, Josh has read hundreds and probably even thousands of submissions, and he works with a handful of volunteer readers. These readers, of whom Josh was one of them for several years, they're really an essential part of a magazine like ours because we're really dedicated to discovering new talent among the thousands of submissions that come in every year. So a big thank you to our readers. In addition to reading all of those submissions, Josh also keeps his ear to the ground, and he has encouraged writers to send us their work over the years, sometimes stepping in to help shape their drafts before publication. I've seen it in track changes. His very swift and insightful moves that can sometimes bring a piece of writing just right into focus. I like to think of it as him noticing the beating heart of a piece and finding a way to cut away or maybe even add just what needs to be done to make it fully reveal its power. So while we have made it clear in our program announcement that Josh has been a nonfiction editor here for about 10 years, what you might not know is that his career at the New England Review has really been much longer and more varied even than that. In fact, Josh first appeared on the masthead in New England Review in 1993 as a student intern while he was an undergraduate at Middlebury College. And at the time, the acting editor was David Huddle. He next came in contact with NER about 10 years later, then as a contributor. And he went on to publish with the editor, Stephen Donadio, a handful of really intriguing essays about literature and place. So he was writing about William Gaddis, Thoreau, Hawthorne, and then finally a piece called Lovecraft at the Automat. Do you remember that one, Josh?
Oh, yes.
So when I got here to New England Review as managing editor in 2004, then we brought him on to be a reader in fiction. So he had some really great discoveries there in the fiction section for a few years. But as anyone who knows Josh will know, he really is not one to be pigeonholed by genre. So time passes. He goes to Stanford for a while, continues reading off and on until we made him the web editor. That was in around 2011. And in the role of web editor, he created a couple of really interesting sections. One of them was called Secret Americas. You may remember this one, in which writers responded to photographs from the Library of Congress. They had just released their entire archive of visual content online. So Josh was like, we need to do something with this. And so came up with this idea of people writing in response to these photographs. He did another series right after that called Confluences, where writers responded to artworks in all kinds of media. And there were some really beautiful pieces in those sections. And I believe that some of the writers who will be sharing their work tonight contributed in those areas too. So finally, around 2013, when I became editor of the journal, we switched things up one more time when I asked him to be our nonfiction editor. It has been an amazing run. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that as this evening continues. But I can tell you that through this whole time, he's always brought a genuine sense of excitement and discovery. He's always in the wings, cheering everybody on as they find the right voice and tone and vision for their work. But we can't really talk about the past decade in nonfiction at NER without also talking about Elizabeth Kadetsky, who came on as nonfiction co-editor in 2018. And for the past 5 years, Josh and Elizabeth have made an excellent team. And we're really delighted that Elizabeth will be continuing on in the role of nonfiction editor. She is here in the audience tonight. In fact, I think I did see her pass through here, but she's going to stay in the background as she is quite ill. So I'm going to share her remarks later on about halfway through the program. There she is. Hi, Elizabeth. Goodbye, Elizabeth. Okay, so Josh's enthusiasm, his adaptability, his energy, and his curiosity have continued to evolve and find a home at the New England Review for now nearly 30 years, including his past decade in nonfiction. So you all probably won't be too surprised to learn that his relationship with New England Review is not over yet. He's going to continue on as a contributing editor, occasionally editing some special features for print and online. His first project in that role is going to be a supplement called Chungking Express 30, which will feature about a dozen writers, including Mei Lee Chai, writing in response to Wong Kar-wai's iconic film. This supplement will be out in December, which will be just in time for the 30th anniversary of that film. So I'm going to stop there. I've already taken up more than my time, but I do want to give just one more big thanks to Josh for your incredible work, your vision and your dedication and enthusiasm for everything New England Review over the years. And now I am going to happily turn the attention over to Josh himself. Take it away, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for those kind words. Thank you, Leslie, for all your labor on this event. Thank you all for coming. I'm overwhelmed with joy seeing all of your names, and it's just great to be here with you all. So when Carolyn and Leslie first suggested this, I was slightly worried. It might feel like attending my own wake. But then I thought about it a little bit more and I got really excited because it would be like attending my own wake. Oldest dream in the book. So what I'm here to say very sincerely, as briefly as possible, is simply this. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Stephen Donadio, who saw something, heaven knows what, in me as a student intern in the hallowed offices of New England Review. Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Carolyn. Almost 30 years ago. Unreal. I went, thank you. I went to Middlebury because I wanted to be a writer, and now I am one. I'm publishing my 7th book, which is a cinema novella called The Haunted Screen, which is forthcoming from the wonderful folks at Strange Objects and Deep Vellum later this year. And I get to teach the next generation of great student filmmakers down at VCU Arts in Richmond, which is pretty cool for me. But I chose Middlebury because I liked this magazine. I actually found a back issue of the New England Review Breadloaf Quarterly, as it was called at one point, and it had a poem in it. It was called The Haircut. And I was on a campus visit with my grandparents and my mom when I was 17 years old. And I was at the age where I thought that reading a good poem would be a very sound basis for deciding where I was going to live for the next 4 years. So my apprenticeship continued through my years as a Stegner Fellow living in San Francisco. And this was back when we had paper submissions still being forwarded to us in these giant boxes filled with people's dreams that would arrive every month. quite an enterprise. And yeah, I've been working for the magazine in various capacities ever since then, up until the present. Carolyn mentioned we are putting the finishing touches on our second special issue on film on Wong Kar-wai and Chungking Express. Please subscribe. And Elizabeth Kadetsky, my nonfiction co-editor, also has new treasures for your reading pleasure coming up. And her vision of the essay guides us forward from here. I cannot wait to read more. And Carolyn's been a one-of-a-kind mentor to so many of us here. I've been honored by the trust that she placed in me and Elizabeth as nonfiction editors. Thank you. Thank you. And our shared curatorial ethos, it really is about finding that secret elixir that sustains all great literary publishers, which is that intoxicating balance between established and emerging new voices. The slush is the way and the light. And of the readers reading tonight, excuse me, the writers reading tonight, I count some very dear friends, but also a few people I'm meeting for the first time tonight, which is really wonderful for me, but it also speaks of New England Review. It's a journal that spends its efforts finding writers that none of us know personally and establishing this new tradition that we have of issues of NER dedicated exclusively to emerging writers who are working on their first books. So to the writers who are reading their work from NER tonight, thank you so, so much. I really cannot express how delighted and honored I am that you're taking time out tonight to be here and share your writing. And the same to everyone here. This is honestly pretty overwhelming. But I also want to thank all of our writers who are here tonight or might be watching this, as well as honestly, any writer who has ever had the courage to submit their essays to us. Not always an easy thing to do. And let me just close by revealing the secret, if I may, to getting serious consideration as a writer from New England Review, which gets thousands of submissions every year and can only publish a few dozen. First, write about the things you care about the most. Second, align the outer journey with the inner journey. That's it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Now I get to sit back and enjoy.
Yay, thank you, Josh. That was very fun to hear. And as you all know, we have a pretty spectacular crew of nonfiction writers here tonight who are going to give you a sampling of their work. We're not going to take the time to read all of their bios one by one, but Leslie's going to paste those details in the chat if you want to know some more. I should also note that unfortunately, Susan Daitch is not going to be able to join us tonight due to a family emergency. But we still have 7 wonderful writers coming right up. I will read their names right now, and then we will have one after the other until about midway through, when I will deliver some remarks for Elizabeth, unless she decides she's up for it. And then we'll continue the program with the last 3 writers. So first we'll have Mei Lee Chai, followed by Kate Lebo, then Sean Hill, followed by Ben Miller, then a little interruption with some thoughts from Elizabeth. Then we'll have Jung Hae Chae, Maud Casey, and finally Skip Horack. So take it away, take it away, Mei Lee Chai.
Thank you so much. It's a tremendous honor to be here. I'm thrilled to share some brief thoughts about how much I love Josh and his work. Follow him on Text and Image, and you'll see him share some really interesting text and image and his own writing. I'm super excited for your upcoming book, and I'm thrilled to be part of the Chungking Express special essay section for the upcoming edition of New England Review. And just thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are an amazing editor, and it has been a thrill to work with you. So I'm just going to read very briefly from an essay of mine that appeared in the pages of New England Review and on the website and was chosen as a notable essay for Best American Essays. It's called Women of Nanjing. On a recent trip to Nanjing, I watch as a middle-aged woman, perhaps a little younger than I, walks down the sidewalk of Zhongyang Boulevard with her dog, a fluffy white Bichon-like creature. The woman is swathed in layers of yellow chiffon like a bridesmaid. Judging by her age, I know she must have experienced at least part of the Cultural Revolution when everyone was forced to wear green or blue unisex pants and jackets. She must have lived through the early reform period too, when student demonstrations echoed through the streets. If she is a local, then she must remember all the decades when there was no heat in the winter in Nanjing, despite the snow, nor air conditioning in summer, despite the heat. When the light changes, she bends over and picks up her dog and carries it across the street in her plump arms like a baby, then sets it down carefully on the other side. The dog dances a little on its hind legs after she puts it down, does a little flip, then eagerly follows her down the sidewalk. Sometimes a revolution looks like this: a yellow-clad middle-aged woman walking down the sidewalk with her pampered Bichon. I remember when dogs were banned as pets, when the Communist Party referred to them as remnants of petty bourgeois elitism. When I was a foreign student at Nanjing University in the late 1980s, the Chinese students used to tell me stories of the pets they once had. There was a tiny break in the policy in the awkward transition years between Mao's death in 1976, signaling the end of the Cultural Revolution, and the start of the open door reform period under Deng Xiaoping in December of 1978. No one knew how far the reforms would go or how fast. When one student was in elementary school, he remembered that suddenly it was legal to have pets in the city. And like that, farmers from the countryside started bringing in puppies and kittens for sale. His family bought him a dog, just a tiny one, but the policy changed and pets were outlawed again. Maybe they were considered spiritual pollution. Maybe it was because rabies vaccines were rare and expensive, and someone in the government felt that pets could be a health hazard in the densely populated cities. He had already grown to love his dog, so his family conspired to hide it from the authorities. There were so many people, he remembered, who did this, keeping their pets indoors and bringing cats and dogs out into the alleys to play in the sun only when they were absolutely sure there were no police in sight. He remembered it was on one such day that he was playing with his dog, just a small dog really, and had forgotten to pay attention, or else the police had come very quickly, or maybe the police knew full well what people were doing with their secret illegal pets and were lying in wait. He heard the whistle, and then the police were there. His grandmother came out immediately. His parents must have been at work, and she held him while he cried. The policemen took his dog, along with the other pets that they rounded up from his neighbors' homes in the alley, and then they beat the animals to death with clubs right there in the street. I'll never forget, he said. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
That was amazing, Maylee. Thank you. What a concluding image. Josh, I don't think I've ever seen your face before. It's nice to see your face. Congratulations on a incredible run at New England Review. It has just been my pleasure to get to work with you on my nonfiction. I think that The Loud-Proof Room, which is what I'm going to read from tonight, was the second essay I had ever submitted to a real literary magazine. And it was a mess when I submitted it. And I remember feeling like Josh had just gone in and kind of plucked out the heart of it, kind of the way that Carolyn was describing earlier, and found what it really was. He sent it back to me and he said, see what you can do with this. And then I did some stuff, sent it back to him, and he published it. And it really started me on my nonfiction writing career. And it really set the tone for me about what an editor could do and the kind of relationship that I wanted to have with my editors. So I really admire your sight, your ability to see in other people's work what it can be, and also the space that you give writers to then go make it happen. So thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to read the first section of The Loud-Proof Room. I was born with a strawberry hemangioma splashed over the bottom half of my right ear and 2 inches down my neck. The sort of red that has purple trapped inside it, a swollen, shocking hue. For the first year, I had no hair to disguise it. The sight of me made strangers uncomfortable. My birthmark was so red and angry, and I cried so murderously when my parents bathed it, that it became, as I grew, the explanation for a lot of things. Why I was teased in school, why I cried easily, why I couldn't hear conversational tones out of my right ear. By the time I was 10, the skin faded to a model of mostly normal looking tissue. It looks enough like a burn scar that no one asks what happened. Mostly I forget it's there. When a new friend asks me, "What's up with your ear?" I need a second to remember what she's talking about. My father and I were in a motorcycle accident when I was 5, I say. It tore my ear half off. When she looks sorry for asking, I tell her I was born this way, which isn't exactly the truth. If it was, I'd still have a stoplight for an ear. Until my family began to comment on how deaf I was. When my back was to them, I didn't respond to direct questions, didn't know they were being asked. I didn't know my hearing was going. I'd gotten so used to having a half-deaf ear that it didn't occur to me that the aural slips I'd been experiencing might be the fault of the other ear, the good one going bad. I booked an appointment at the otolaryngology department at the city's biggest hospital. The nurse who took my vitals said, "You're the youngest person I've talked to all day," in a way that was supposed to make me feel better, but didn't. Dehiscence is a word botanists use to describe a flower bud that's about to burst into bloom. Otolaryngologists use dehiscence to describe 2 spots in my skull, one over each superior canal of my hearing organs that have thinned to 2 tiny gaps. The gaps leak sound waves into my body and allow body noises to echo too loudly in my ears. To diagnose me, the doctor asked if I could hear myself blink. "Yes," I said. "Can you hear your heels when you walk?" "Yes." He wrapped a tuning fork on my ankle. "Can you hear that?" "No." "That's a good thing," he said. My pulse, my flexing knees, my neck bones as I turn my head on the pillow, my teeth as they crunch into chips, all these sounds are louder than the conversation of the person sitting next to me. Now I understood why I could sing on key but never hold a tune. When I make a melody with my body, it mutes the music that's outside my skull. The doctor said my superior canal dehiscence could be cured with minor surgery that involved a night in the ICU. "That doesn't sound like minor surgery," I said. "Nothing to worry about," he said. "When would you like to schedule your pre-op?" "I wouldn't," I said. The next doctor I visited was the teacher of the first doctor. He was cautious, patient, uneager to cut me open. I liked him immediately. He said my condition represented multiple pathologies: a stiff stapes bone, a collapsed eardrum, dehiscence, possibly something else. My symptoms muddled the identity of each individual malady. What mattered, what wasn't a mystery, I had significant hearing loss in both ears. We decided to try hearing aids first. If they worked, I would wear them the rest of my life. I preferred this decision. It is reversible. You see, half sensibility has benefits. Not knowing what I'm missing can be a different kind of knowing. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's such an honor to be here and celebrate Josh. I met Josh a decade and a half ago at Stanford, and he became a very dear person to me very early on. At some point, he was like, "I got this project I'm doing, this owls thing. You want to be a part of it? Like this community building thing that you do, man." And I came on as a contributor, a curator, and an editor. And it was like one of the most favorite things I've done. One of my favorite projects is to sort of have been a part of that. I still point people to that project today. I know you to be a careful and generous editor, especially of a poet's prose. Thank you for reading this poet's prose. You're the reason I get to read the beginning of my essay for which it stands tonight. Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate you. For which it stands. For all of their waving charm and aesthetic appeal, flags are really just a kind of shorthand, broad symbols used to communicate quickly and perhaps at a distance, like on a battlefield. Turns out that is their origin. Simple visual proclamations to friends and foe to say, here we are, and we be we, and not ye ye. I hadn't exactly thought about their battlefield banner beginnings until recently. I was born and raised in Milledgeville, Georgia, and going to school in the 1980s, I said the Pledge of Allegiance along with my classmates facing the American flag with our hands over our hearts at the start of each day. I liked the rhythm of the words in my mouth and the cadence we were taught. The syntactical pauses inevitably ran, for which it stands, together to almost become one word. It and those other morsels, and to the Republic, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, pleased my tongue and my ear, though first grade me surely didn't have enough context to understand what I was making my pledge. I grew up in the Deep South, and as an adult, I've lived in Texas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, California, and Alaska, and had extended stints in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. I've been to all 50 states, visited each of the stars on our flag, and driven through most on long road trips. I've seen cultural differences and similarities. I've seen how menus shift as you drive across the country, even in big fast food chains, and lamented the fact that grits ain't a national breakfast staple. I've learned about weather, dry heat versus the sultry summer I grew up with, and that 10 below zero feels remarkably warm after days or weeks of 20 or 30 below. I've seen the focus of prejudice and racism shift as I've shifted locations. All this travel has given me some perspective. Now I live in Montana, and I'm gaining new perspective of our country and flags. During my first winter in Montana, during the coldest February on record, I took my not quite 3.5-year-old son to the Interactive Science Museum here in our town for some socializing. On that overcast day, with the temperature dancing cheek to cheek with zero, we found ourselves walking from the parking lot in step with another family, a mom, dad, and young son. We were a family of color walking alongside a white family. First, I saw the father's real tree or mossy oak camo jacket and cap. I noticed he had a gray beard, as do I, and thought incorrectly, as some may think about me, that he could be the granddad. Then I noticed on the front of his cap the Confederate flag, or I guess more properly, the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia, General Robert E. Lee's command. But I spoke to him because why not? I'm a Southerner, and in the South, people generally acknowledge each other's presence. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you, Josh. Nice to see you. There's an old friend of yours here with me that hasn't been on camera yet, that's here to celebrate with me, a paper cutter from the office of the New England Review that was there for all those years from 1993 on. It's been so great to work with you. And, you know, today I was thinking about ways to express my thanks for the support. and the faith in my work. And I jotted down a few notes that I like to read, and then I'm going to go right into reading excerpt from the first essay we worked on, Gene Bink's Long Journey into Night. The editor's mission is such an interesting one, akin to the conductor of a symphony. The conductor plays no explicit instrument, yet is involved in every single one. It's simultaneously an art of aching overview and the trudging details of messages and music. A great editor like Josh is a palpable force that wears palpability lightly, embracing invisibility out of confidence. Any writer would be blessed to work with such a collaborator, and I will never, ever forget his patient effect on my work. Gene Bink's Journey into Night. It's going to be about a page and a half. One Thursday night in 1980, that interminable presidential election year now melted into the slippery coin of Reagan's Shangri-La moment. A Clinton, Iowa public school teacher drove 41 miles south to the larger river city of Davenport to attend a meeting of Writer's Studio, the local club for aspiring and expiring literary practitioners. He knew nobody seated at the folding table that spanned the jump ball circle in the rented gym of a defunct Catholic school. Technically, he was not late. We regular attendees were criminally early. I, a spinsterish 16-year-old male in a Hawaiian shirt, quivered along with my peer group of genuine elders. This stranger wore a V-neck sweater, slacks and loafers, a meditative gaze and thin laconic grin. It always startled us to be found. Most first-time visitors suffered under the weight of anesthetic. Either they had been evicted from another group, wordsmiths or penwomen, or swept out of the bungalow of a fed-up aunt. To us, these exiles lugged their trilogy concepts, claims to inborn talent, their influences, Rimbaud, Fletcher Knebel. They careened toward a too little place at the pad-strewn table, exchanging glances with the uncurling tentacles of our trepidation. Not this one. This writer specimen paused a respectful distance from our tight circle. Upright, no apparent literary leanings, he stated, "I'm Bink." Blink, yelped cigarette-flicking Blanche Redmond, hard of hearing. No, Gene Bink. B-E-E-N-K. I saw the meeting notice in the paper. It was nothing to see, a scattering of info grains on the organization's and club's calendar in the Sunday Quad City Times. Wire rims rested on Bink's clean pink nose like a silver praying mantis. His sweater was fire engine red. I wondered, was it that legendary stuff, Pendleton cashmere? I had only heard about cashmere from ecstatic thrift store rack shufflers who at first touch felt they had found it, but moan, second touch, had not. White hair groomed into a cotton candy plume made Bink appear not old, but conversely youthful. He said, "I came to find out what you are up to." What are you up to? A fair and simple question complicated by the fact that Bink wanted an answer, really seemed to care about the answer. By gum, what were we up to? Howard Koenig, born on the same day as Edgar Allan Poe, looked at the long-haired Jack, Vietnam vet with a stalled war novel, who looked at Norman Ross, railroad vignettes, who looked at Karen Sternberg, phantasmagoric novel, who looked at John Morgan, haiku practitioner, who looked at Gordon, novel with no plot, who looked at Evelyn Sternberg, Karen's cousin, who looked at Lucille I, Blanche's friend, who looked at Roy Wygant, viral tales desiring to be viral, who looked at Kazi Diaz, rhyming cat ditties, who looked at Blanche, 18th century sonnets, who glared at me, her favorite fly to swat. The thing to do when Blanche glared was nothing, nothing but nod. Tick-tock went the caged ceiling clock. We, tick-tock, tick-tock. We were up to the business of writing, and one might say, no business at all. Thanks again, Josh.
Thank you, Ben and Sean and Kate and Mei Lee. I have loved these essays for a long time and have read them each many, many times, but it's actually really fun to hear them again, even in just a little bit. So thank you so much for reading those. We are going to take a moment to have some comments from Elizabeth Kadetsky. I don't know. I see you, Elizabeth. Are you up for making your comments, or would you prefer I read them for you? What did she say?
We are super secure, so
Oh,
I think
no.
you should read them. Thank you. So
Okay,
sorry.
no, it's no problem. I'm glad that you're here though, which is great. So this is what Elizabeth has written for us to hear tonight. Let's see. It was bittersweet going through my emails with Josh. I'll miss him. Looking back over our emails showed me what fun we had corresponding about the work and how often we had mind meld, his term. Josh was a wonderful mentor, cheerleader, and colleague from when I first started working with him as a reader in 2015, then as an editorial panel member, and then as co-editor starting in 2018. I already feel the loss of our working relationship and our special intellectual connection, though I'm delighted he's staying on as a contributing editor, and I'm thrilled about his new position elsewhere. Stay tuned about that. We can't tell you yet. I should also say that I admire him tremendously as a writer, and I loved our periodic long phone conversations and meetups all over the world, in London, DC, State College, Pennsylvania, Seattle. I went through some of our email exchanges and found so many bon mots and words of wisdom, and I thought I'd share some here. So here we go. These are Josh's emails, or notes, probably one or the other, insubmitable. We're not interested in publishing sexist work at all. I hope this helps narrowing things down. We would rather work with a flawed piece that can be edited than a more placid essay that takes no risks. The mobile experience on Submittable is truly shocking. Congrats on your first bullseye, Elizabeth. Here's to many more. Hamptons and Poodles, 2 strikes. The shared problem with all of these, just for future reference, is that being excellent isn't enough to get into NER. The essay has to have that certain something, a kind of fully loaded spring to the sentences. Too much and then, and not enough slowdown and inner journey. Why is this submission in all caps? The extra level of interesting is a great way to put why we must turn down so much great writing. Of course, sometimes we're mistaken. This one is a bit literal and linear for my taste. And finally, when my heart races, that's a sign for me that the work goes to Carolyn. There's so much good, very good, and even excellent work that will never get published in NER because it doesn't provide that frisson for our readers. So good luck to Josh. I look forward to our continued collaboration. From Elizabeth. So Jung Hae Chae, you are next.
Thank you so much. I am a little bit nervous. I think that among these giants, these great writers, I am a baby. I feel so humbled to be here and read along. Thank you, New England Review, to Carolyn, to Josh, and to Leslie. I actually didn't even know Josh. JM stood J stood for Josh until recently. I don't believe we've ever met, but Josh was so kind and amazingly generous to reach out to me after my piece was published in 2021. And it was very moving. He wrote me in this very intimate way. Editors, you know, many different types of editors. So I was so moved. I remember that clearly. I was at a residency in Maine and reading this DM message from an editor of New England Review. Complimenting my little story. So thank you for that, for granting me, you know, a small piece of joy there and sense of, you know, worth. Oh God, I'm I'm glitching. My brain is glitching a little. So I just wanted to read, and also I recently found out that Josh is a film critic, and so today when I was preparing for this, I thought that I would read a section from my story, my essay that starts with a film. So my essay is called The Gay, the No-Name Hair Salon, the Coup d'etat, and the Small Dreamers. Section 3. I will be skipping a little part in the interest of time. Over the Arirang Pass, a rage. There's a little-known 90s South Korean movie called A Hot Roof, set on the rooftop of an apartment complex, like the one in which I grew up. The rooftop, in fact, is where most of the action in the film takes place, where a dozen neighborhood women stage a days-long standoff against the police after being moved to collectively intervene in an active domestic violence scene that ensues on the doorsteps of an apartment building. When the throng of bystanders, notably the husbands and other men in the neighborhood, sits around watching the woman being battered by her husband, the gang of seemingly ordinary housewives who reside in the same apartment complex as the couple comes to her rescue. With pots and sticks and fly swatters in hand, they beat up on the husband, who later dies en route to the hospital. The movie was marketed as a comedy bordering on the absurd. God forbid the men and women of South Korea should take wife beating seriously. The producers needed to make people gasp at the same time as they laughed out loud in order to make them take notice of the issue. I'm going to skip a little bit. Of course, I couldn't help but conjure up the women from the hair salon back in the day in my grandmother's neighborhood. If given half a chance, they would have done exactly that. Collectively murdered their stupid, cheating, good-for-nothing husbands who had beaten them in front of their children and neighbors, cracking open the beastly, ghostly imaginings of their female ancestors whose souls are still awaiting their turn at redemption over the Arirang Pass, as the ballad goes. Their weapon of choice? They would have taken the hot rods off their curling irons and used them to skin the man's ungrateful balls before pouring the perm solution down his throat. Goodness gracious, they would have had a ball. You would have heard them chant Arirang, Arirang, Arario, the ancient folk lyric of the Korean people, and in its refrain, heard their deep, guttural, many mountains moving rage and sorrow, reverberating over the Arirang Pass. Inside the melancholic notes of Arirang lies a low-lying rage. It is the kind of rage whose origin is love. It once was kind and patient. It waited and waited until lover became prey. It is the kind of rage born of indignation, neatly wrapped inside a hair bun and kept back, away from people's eyes and attention. It is the kind that seeks company in misery, that commiserates in a standoff, the kind inherited and sustained over generations. As in the word Arirang itself, which has no direct meaning, over the Arirang Pass, anything is possible. The rage over the Arirang Pass reverberates through the night sky as its wanderers search and shapeshift in the bardo among the departed, its multifarious meanings meeting the listener whence she has come and must go. They come due, as would the obligations of a dead come due. It's the women who sing the ballad of the Arirang, always the woman. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. It's a delight and an honor to be here celebrating Josh and to get to hear all of these wonderful writers. I'm going to save my remarks for after this short piece I'm going to read. It's a piece unto itself. It's a short piece I wrote about Vivian Meyer's self-portraits. It goes like this. The ones I like best are the ones where she isn't even there. A shadow on a lawn, my glasses, a shimmer in the shiny head of a sprinkler, a shadow sliver of her wide-brimmed hat and her broad shoulders on the sidewalk at the feet of two women, creamy legs crossed on a bench, leaning into conversation. A shadow puppet dancing on the side of a Chicago building. She has several shadows at the beach. In one, trees grow out of her shadow head. In another, possibly my favorite, the shadow brim of her hat almost touches the hair-rollered head of a sunbathing woman. I wanted to figure out who she was, says John Maloof in the documentary Finding Vivian Meier, co-written and co-directed with Charlie Siskel. Maloof's the intrepid, endearing guy who discovered the treasure trove of Meyer's undeveloped photographs, over 100,000 negatives at a thrift auction house in Chicago, and made them public after her death. Why is a nanny taking all these photos? Maloof asks. The only unimaginative part of the movie involves those peculiar questions. Why is she childless? Why is she unmarried? Occasionally discernible in the subtext of interviews conducted with her employers and the children in her care. There was also her stubborn eccentricity. Why does she speak with a possibly fake French accent? The woman with the twin lens Rolleiflex camera was a mystery. I keep misremembering the movie's title. It should be called In Search of Vivian Meier, I keep insisting. Meier was a mystery, fascinated by the mystery of the self. She understood there's only ever in search of, never finding. No pinning the butterfly, its roving, expansive wanderings, the poignant flapping against its cage. Meier took lots of photographs, intimate, wonderfully strange street photographs on par with Gary Winogrand and Diane Arbus. But it is the self-portraits in stark black and white, the color of the world bled out, their smoky elusivity that I can't stop looking at. Meyer's self-portraits are questions. Am I her? Her? Am I here? The self-portraits are dated 1953 to 1971, except for those with no date at all. She's not always a shadow. There she is, tall, startling, beautiful, reflected in a silver platter in an antique store, in a hubcap, in a bathroom whose mirrors extend her into infinity. There, reflected in a store window, a little girl hamming it up beside her. There, in another store window, the reflection of two women in her skirt as though they've taken refuge there. There's only one where she's smiling, reflected in a full-length mirror hoisted out of a dumpster by a man whose face you cannot see. There's no getting to the bottom of her. So part of the reason I chose this was that I feel like Josh, like Vivian Meyer, is a wonderful sui generis weirdo. And this is part of what makes him such an extraordinary writer and so an extraordinary editor. His bottomless curiosity, the depth of feeling, and the variety of humility that truly comprehends the wondrous, messy mystery of us all. I'm not exactly sure how the following story is relevant to his stellar editing, but I deeply believe that it is. During the fire pit part of the pandemic, I got a text out of the blue from Josh saying he was doing a walking tour of DC and could he stop off at my fire pit for tea? And I was trying to remember what the walking tour was exactly. So I wrote Emily to kind of see if I could suss it out. And she was like, which walking tour? There were so many. I think it was like a walking around to different cemeteries. Anyway, I said, of course, because a conversation with Josh is always its own walking adventure. He's always just all in. And he is forever in search of an asker of questions who understands that articulating the question is the most important thing. And that's something he does, I think, as an editor and as a writer. So Josh, you're the best. Thank you.
I think that's me. Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's such a great event. You know, thank you all for being a part of it, and thanks for letting me be a part of it. I really do appreciate it. It blows my mind, but I've known Josh Tyree for almost 20 years now. We've been in writing workshops together. We've taught together. There have been many cups of coffee and many pints of beer along the way. So much great conversation, so many laughs, and oh God, yeah, those walking tours that I'll never forget those. I'll cherish those. If you ever want a second career, Josh, all you need is a few segues and learn how to walk backwards, and you'll be ready to go. But yeah, he is truly, you know, one of the kindest, most intelligent, and delightfully quirky people I know. A weirdo, like Maud said, but in all the best ways. And I'm truly honored to call him a friend. And man, I'm so glad I didn't go first because, you know, tonight I thought this was a roast. I have like 20 pages of insult comedy that I need to pivot from, Josh. All the different things that JM stand for. I have lists and lists. But pause for laughter. Anyway, this the New England Review, in no small measure due to Josh's support, has been kind enough to publish a couple of nonfiction pieces for me. And the first was a short essay I wrote for a special issue supplement on the films of Terrence Malick. Now, you know, anyone who knows Josh knows that his love of literature and maybe the city of London is perhaps rivaled only by his passion for film, whether it be, you know, The Big Lebowski or some unwatchable French film about sad clowns. He binge watched the entire Criterion collection, then wrote a great book of fiction inspired by the process. That pretty much kind of says it all right there. Right? I remember those days. Josh and his roommate Mike McGriff, great poet, were watching like 2 or 3 movies a day in their apartment in the Mission District in San Francisco. And I just remember going there. It was like a descent into madness. And but just some of my best memories of is watching him watch film, just the joy that it brings me. And that's what he brings to life, really. A while back, Josh asked if I might be interested in contributing something for that Malick issue, and coincidentally enough, I happened to have a kind of weird and kind of embarrassing anecdote about the time that I sent the famously private Terrence Malick a letter out of the blue to applaud him for the work he did in creating these CGI representations with vocalizations too of an extinct bird, the Carolina parakeet, in his film The New World. It's a long story, and like I said, embarrassing, but with much amazing and valuable editorial help from Josh, my essay did find a place in the issue. I was looking through some old emails earlier today. A friend sent me this nice note, like, congrats once the essay was published, and shortly after it was published. And I told her in my email back, quote, Josh did a lot of uncredited editing, writing, getting that thing to read more than like Skip's weird story. And true words have never been spoken. So tonight, and thanks, I thought I'd just read a couple paragraph excerpt from that parakeet essay. And trust me, that essay does owe its existence to Josh. Okay. 7 seconds, and then the parakeets of the new world are gone. But imagine the time, money, and labor that went into those 7 seconds. Yes, up to that point, I was a Malick fan, but now I was a fanatic. After the publication of my novel, in a moment of earnestness that embarrasses me to this day, I mailed a copy of my book to the best address I could find for him. My own Carolina parakeet scene flagged, including as well a letter of admiration and gratitude for the movie, while also explaining how much I, as a fellow parakeet necromancer, had appreciated being able to look over his shoulder and crib from him. A message in a bottle, basically. So imagine my shocked surprise when a few months later I received an email from an associate producer of The New World asking me for my phone number. Would it be okay, she asked, if I gave you a call? In my racing mind, this could only mean one thing. Terrence Malick had read my novel, recognized its genius, and now, of course, wanted to make my book into a movie, and no doubt be my best friend. I reply within minutes, but then a week goes by, then another, and another, nothing. I'm using all of my writerly powers of empathy to conjure up the possible reason this polite stranger would want to speak with me on the phone. Sure, maybe Malick et al. Simply wished to thank me for the book, but this could have been accomplished in that email, no? So what had I done? What had I said in my reply and in subsequent increasingly manic but also unanswered replies to scare them off? How had I ruined this? Put another way, I was losing my mind. And then finally a call from an Austin, Texas area code. Me outside a strip mall just south of San Francisco, overjoyed and relieved, smirking at how un-Malick of a place an asphalt wasteland off US 101 was to begin our lifetime of fruitful creative collaboration. The woman on the other end of the line couldn't have been nicer. Terry just wanted me to call, she said, and thank you for noticing the parakeets. That made his day. I'll stop there. Josh, thank you for being such a great editor and such a great friend. This has been a wonderful event, and thank you, Carolyn, and everyone at NER for this event. All this recognition and praise for Josh is so well deserved. So, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Skip and Maud and Jung Hae and everybody. What a blast! Like I feel like, how come I never got a walking tour? So Josh, you owe me one. Maybe you can come up and have something to say about Middlebury, or I'll have to, I don't know, come down to DC. So yeah, thanks so much for all the comments and the readings and for bringing up the weirdo aspect, which I wasn't going to say it, but I thank you all for being brave. This was super fun. Thanks everyone who came tonight for celebrating with us. Thanks to Leslie for organizing this, getting the word out, keeping the tabs on the technology, to all of our writers, Mei Lee Chai, Kate Lebo, Sean Hill, Ben Miller, Jung Hae, Maud Kesey, and Skip Horack. And thank also to Elizabeth Kadetsky, our ongoing nonfiction editor, who's also doing some brilliant work. And finally, to Josh Tyree, thank you, JM, for making this such a delightful event, for being such a joy to work with on an ongoing basis for many years, and I'm sure many more years to come. You've really helped make NER a very fun place to work, very enriching place. And we're glad that we don't have to say we'll miss you, because we know you're still going to be around. So thanks, everybody. We're going to close this meeting off in just a couple of minutes. But before we do, have a great evening. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you hopefully again soon.
Thanks so much, everyone. What an honor. Thank you, readers. Thank you for all for coming. I'm overwhelmed with emotions right now, and but I'm so grateful. Thank you.